Okay, hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas. We're coming to you from the mountains of Western North Carolina, Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple. To start with, to all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. Well, that's a lot you could say about, about that. Of course, in this politically correct age, maybe I need to be careful, but nevertheless, you're just speaking sort of from a traditional perspective. I mean, mothers do so much, it's humbling. I know once my teacher said there's no more powerful force in the universe than a mother's love for her children. Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about diet and exercise. There's volumes we could say about it. But I think there's some main points that it's good for everybody to know, and we'll touch on those, and we'll just see how deeply we go. If people really like it, I mean, there's so much we could say. I've made a study of this sort of thing. I'm a veterinarian, so I know a lot about physiology, but I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that. So these are just some perspectives we had, and as a disclaimer, consult your physician before you try any of this. Okay. First thing I want to say, and we got Scott and Adrian with us here, so this should be a lot of fun. First thing I want to say, though, is that when it comes to diet, there are all kinds of different diets out there, aren't there? There's don't eat anything white. I've heard that one. Don't eat any bread. Pritikin diet, Atkins diet, intermittent fasting. What else, you guys? I mean, just the list is long.
Ayurvedic.
Yeah, Ayurveda diet. That's a really good point, Scotty. That's an important thing to talk about. And there's the, because, with respect to that, here's an interesting thing. They've done studies, and it takes 3 generations for a physiology to adjust to a new diet, like if you move from United States to France, for example. And they've done studies on why is it that French people can drink wine or whatever, and so we can get misled there because we try to emulate a diet from a different country, but it takes 3 generations, they say, for the DNA to adjust to a diet, the very depth of the physiology, all the way down to the DNA. It's also interesting that there's that expression, it takes 3 generations to make a gentleman. So I think even psychologically, it takes 3 generations for somebody to really acclimate to a different culture, and that applies to diet. But be that as it may, boy, I can see how I'd be pushing buttons right off the bat, because somebody might say, oh, you can learn a lot from the Ayurvedic diet. Absolutely. I'm not arguing that. Or from the Mediterranean diet, or all these different, provincial diets. And that's true. But nevertheless, that point about the DNA is, I believe, valid. But the main point I want to say, and there's studies to support this, to maintain the proper weight and health. We think about, oh, don't eat this because it's not good for you. I eat more of that because it is good for you. So the main thing that studies confirm is don't eat too many calories. And also, you can lose weight and you can get to a good level of fitness by eating just candy bars. Fitness, I mean, maybe we shouldn't say that because of nutritional value and all that, but you could lose weight and maintain a healthy level of weight by eating nothing but candy bars, because it's all about proper caloric intake, not too many calories. And low calorie diets are really the healthiest thing you can do. There's more to it, of course. You need your different micronutrients and vitamins and blah, blah, like that. But this is maybe too extreme of a statement, but I'd rather be on not great diet, but have low caloric intake, than be on a really healthy diet, but eat way too many calories. Uh, uh,
For me,
all
that's
these,
really true.
really,
So,
yeah, all these
yeah.
different, Adrian, all these different diets are different ways of like tricking your physiology to eat not too many calories. There's this one chart I saw, it was great because it said Pritikin diet, blah, 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 what it is, how it works, why it works. And then Ayurveda diet, what it is, how it works, why it works. And then low carb diet, how it is, what it is, why it works. No bread diet, how it is, blah, 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 why it works. And every single one of them came to why it works, low calorie intake. So for me, and now all this stuff is highly individual, which of those diets work for you is highly individual. But for me, I have to count calories, number one. Yeah, I was a math major, math and physics. Maybe that's got something to do with it. But I like to just know exactly how many calories I'm eating a day and stay below a particular level, and it works for me. But even that is funny because here's another thing. As you get into it and as you work with it, you can kind of get a feel for if you're craving something. Is it you craving from a psychological perspective or a habitual perspective? Or is it really something that your physiology wants? And at least for me, what happens, and this is not just something I'm making up. A lot of people say this that are into it. If you really start paying attention, first you can distinguish between that. Is it just compulsive eating, or is it your physiology saying, hey, I need this? You can distinguish between that, and also, is your body needing more carbs? Or is your body needing more protein? Or is your body needing more fats, preferably healthy fats? And that gets pretty subtle. The main thing certainly is caloric restriction. And now here's another thing about that. If you eat low calories day after day after day, what happens is the physiology, not the right word, but kind of shuts down. You get a lower metabolic rate. And so oftentimes what happens then is the body does everything it can to conserve its weight because it's saying, oh, I'm being starved here. And that's oftentimes the cause of when you hit a plateau, you've been on a diet and you're losing weight and you're doing great. And all of a sudden you hit a plateau and you haven't lost any weight for a week or two and you're starving yourself. I've experienced it more than once, and it's in the literature. People, nutrition experts, I think, talk about it all the time. The way to fix that oftentimes is to eat more. Because if you eat a little more, the body says, oh, great, I'm not being starved. And so then it starts to increase the metabolic rate and burn more excess pounds away.
There are diets like that, aren't there?
What's that? I can't hear you. What?
There are diets like that where, you eat 6 days and on the 7th day you eat whatever you want. And then you start again. 6 days, you follow the diet and then eat again, eat what you want.
Yeah, it's called a cheat meal or a refeed meal. And once every week or once every 2 weeks, they have different plans. You just go ahead and feed the body a whole bunch. So this is controversial, okay? But there's a book called Underground Fat Loss Diet. You can Google it, you'll find it. Underground weight loss, underground fat loss. And it talks about a really low calorie diet. And in there, he said, eat anything you want, and you'll lose weight. I mean, good to have balanced nutrition, but anything you want. But he says the refeed day is once every 2 weeks, the way he does it. And even then, you limit your calories. He was saying there, it's so easy to go wild and eat thousands of calories in one day, and you blow your whole diet. So in his extreme, and this is an extreme thing, though I like it, works for me, men eat 1,250 calories a day. That's very low. And you do that for a couple of weeks, and then after a couple of weeks on your refeed day, you just go up to like between 2,500 and 3,000 calories. Now, having said that, a lot of people are going to be like, I don't want to have to count calories. That's too much work. Okay, fine. I would suggest you do it for just a week or even just a day. But ideally and see how many calories you're actually eating a day. Because a lot of people don't realize, potatoes, for example, it's a diet food. But the thing is, people put butter on it, sour cream, whatever. And then another thing about carbs in general, bread even more so than potatoes, certainly. When we eat carbs, that puts a lot of sugar in the blood, blah, blah, blah. And so what happens is we crave more. So there are some kind of foods. That's why the candy bar diet doesn't work very well. You eat a candy bar and your sugar spikes and everything, and then you want more. And it's really, really hard to do a diet by eating a lot of bread or by eating a lot of candy bars, even though it would work but where do you get the willpower to stop that compulsive eating once you start and that signal goes to the brain and you eat? So one of the tricks to not eating too much is to find a diet that works for you, that satisfies you. And that can include when you eat. I mean, some people, 6 meals a day, 6 tiny meals a day. Other people say a big feast at night. And I have found from my own personal experience that it varies. For a while, I was doing just a bunch of small meals a day. And I was like, God, this is it, I think I even got up on my soapbox and talked about it a couple of times. And then there's this other diet where it says, eat a big meal at night, feast or fast, kind of like an intermittent fasting, they call it. And there's advantages to intermittent fasting. If you kind of don't eat for, 12, how many hours did they say? 16 hours a day. Maybe after dinner, you don't eat until, 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever. That gives the body a chance to burn up any kind of ama, from the Ayurvedic or, kind of crud or whatever in the physiology. So it kind of cleans the physiology every day. And one guy was saying that eat a lot of potatoes at night. Why? Because it satiates, it satisfies, and it's extremely low. I mean, you can eat, I think a pound of potatoes is only 300 calories or so. 300 calories, you could eat 2 pounds of potatoes and still have a big protein huge protein serving along with it, And so find foods that satisfy you, be it potatoes. When I have potatoes, I don't put butter or sour cream on them. I put vinegar, cider vinegar, and salt. Or actually, and now this is something, there's something called no salt. It's potassium chloride, not sodium chloride. So it doesn't cause you to bloat up. It doesn't cause high blood pressure, anything like that. You got to be careful with that one, though. You got to be sure you have healthy kidneys and stuff. So I wouldn't recommend. It's called no salt, and it comes in a shaker at the grocery store. I wouldn't recommend. Certainly not doing that exclusively. I use some of that, some regular salt, but that's one I think it's probably best to consult with a physician. In fact, there was a doctor who came to Mount Soma. And I talked with him about it, and he was a kidney doctor, and so I said, "Oh, great!" And so I asked him, and he said, "Yeah, you're fine," So just be aware of that. Now,
really quick, while we're talking about calories, you've talked a number of times, and I've researched it myself, that there seems to be a direct correlation with a low-calorie diet and longevity.
Huge correlation.
Huge correlation.
They haven't done, I mean, of course, it's hard to do a controlled study in that with humans because, we live a long time, but they've done it with, rats and things. And
those centenarian, those centenarian societies up in the mountains, they all eat really low calorie diets. They don't eat a bunch. They don't have potato chips at the grocery store. They're living off the land, and what they're they're
Right.
growing what they're eating, and they're naturally low calorie. So,
And then we haven't talked much about that, but there's so much about potato chips, and they have, what is it in them that's really unhealthy? I'm spaced out right now, but
yeah,
it's good to eat healthy foods, and we're not saying it's not, but what we're really doing is emphasizing the fact that you can lose a lot of weight and eat nothing but potato chips. I would not recommend that, but you can do it. Uh, Again, I think the salt in potato chips and the oils and things like that, whatever it is you just want more. Bet you can't eat one, that kind of a thing. So unless you have a lot of self-control, you do well to avoid those kind of foods, But I've done the thing where I eat a whole bunch of just potatoes with vinegar and some no salt and some salt on it at night with a healthy protein, and you're good. It's good, you can go online and type in chicken breast, for example, and it'll say how many calories in one chicken breast, or if you have one of those little scales. If you don't, it's a good idea to have them. You can weigh. So, okay, if I have, I don't know, 8 ounces of chicken breast or a pound of chicken breast, how much fat is in it? How many calories are in it? But the thing is, so many calories are in the skin. And so if you boneless, skinless chicken breast, boneless, skinless chicken thighs, even the cuts of meat like pork tenderloin is low in calorie compared to steak or lamb or what have you, And you can eat a ton of pork tenderloin or a ton of boneless, skinless chicken breast or chicken thighs and still be at a very low calorie range, So find foods that work for you. There's another thing, shirataki noodles. You can get them at they have them at the grocery store, usually by the tofu, they're called shirataki noodles. Essentially 0 calories. You eat a whole serving of it, it's like 20 calories, which is nothing. And what it has in it, its main ingredient other than water, is glucomannan. Glucomannan is a very interesting substance. It absorbs like 50 times its weight in water. And I have some glucomannan, and if you have cravings or something and you feel like you need to eat and you're starving, you can take like 2 grams of glucomannan. You got to put it in a lot of water. Some of the dangers with glucomannan is if you try to eat it and it starts absorbing water while it's in your throat or in your esophagus, you can get in trouble. Or if you have trouble with constipation anyway, you can eat the glucomannan, absorbs a bunch of water, and then it makes it harder to go to the bathroom. So with some people, it makes it easier to go to the bathroom. It becomes like a laxative for them. So it's individual. But the point is, though, if you put a couple grams in some water and you drink it down with maybe it's good to have, I think, personally, with some kind of food, but a lot of water with it, it fills the stomach and you don't feel hungry anymore. I mean, it's not as satisfying or satiating as eating, a quart of ice cream, but never, it works. And I think glucomannan is one of the, like one of the secrets, really, that not many people know about. It comes from a konjac root. It's a root in Southeast Asia is the origin of it. And you could start with the shirataki noodles, see what you think about them. I like to get a meal. I get shirataki noodles. They say to boil them for 3 minutes. Yeah, you can do that. If you're really lazy, and I know a lot of people have issues with microwaves, and I agree with that, but you can microwave them a little bit after you rinse them out, a little. And then you can dump some fat-free or even regular yogurt on it, and then mix in whatever spices you want, and you eat that, and then it's like, okay, the body's kind of satisfied, So the thing is, research foods, find foods that satisfy you, that you like, that are low in calorie, and then you have to decide what works for you. Do you want to eat a bunch of small meals or one big one at the end of the day? And the main thing, if you just keep your caloric intake at the right level, a healthy level. One of my friends once said that I'm living proof that anything that can be done in excess. So even though it's recommended from that underground fat loss diet to eat 1,250 calories a day, for a while I was doing 850, which is really low. And I lost a lot of weight fast, but it stopped working. I hit a plateau. And so then I upped it to 1,250 and I lost more weight, you know. So these are all just interesting things and worth it knowing. So high carb diet, high fat diet, take your choice. It's good to have protein. It's good to get the nutrients in there. And here's another thing, you know, sometimes, you know, there are people that say, oh, I can eat all I want and I never gain weight. I'm lucky. Well, that could be. But just for all of us that aren't in that category, in Ayurveda, they talk about if you eat and, you know, put on weight, that's because you have good assimilation. And people can eat a whole bunch and don't gain any weight. They have poor assimilation. So there's a rationalization for us, you know. I think now, anything else, you guys, or should we talk about, go on to a little bit about exercise, Scott or Adrian?
Yeah, you have a lot of stuff about exercise on here.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to that. But I'm looking at my notes here because I jotted down so many things that are good. I didn't want to miss any of them. Another name for those shirataki noodles that you might see in the local grocery store is miracle noodles. They call them miracle noodles because they're so low in calories, you know. I was going to talk a little bit about maintenance diet, but I think just if you're interested in some interesting perspective on maintenance diet, pick up a copy and get it online and download it of the underground fat loss, you know. When it comes to exercise now, a couple of things I think are really interesting. I heard on an interview, they were interviewing Sylvester Stallone and trying to get him to say, you know, what good workout program. And his response was, I thought, great. He said, I know what works for me. And that's extremely true. And if there's one thing that is important to pay attention to when it comes to exercise, is what works for you, not just physiologically, but also psychologically, what you enjoy. For me, other than love, I think my favorite emotion is fascination. And one of the things that keeps me going with exercise and diet is fascination. I remember when I learned about glucoman, and I just found it so fascinating and so intriguing, and seeing how I could incorporate it in the diet and if it worked for me, and when to eat, you know, how much to eat, blah, blah. It's fascinating. And the same is true with exercise. And also what works for you, you know, there are people that are in fabulous shape, but they're just no good at doing squats, for example. It's because their legs are too long, or I don't know what they say, but find exercises that work for your physiology. And that's a hard one to learn. I mean, me personally, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a wide receiver stuck in a halfback's body, you know, and I'm never going to be a wide receiver. Those guys are tall and lanky and blah, blah, blah. And so kind of come to grips with the nature of your own physiology and come up with an exercise right for that. By the way, you cannot exercise your way to leanness. You can see it online. I mean, if you eat one piece of pizza, you'd have to run a marathon to burn that off, you know? So again, the way for weight loss is restricted calories. Exercise is good. And if you exercise, I think there are different advantages to exercising when you're trying to lose weight. One of them is that it just gets you into the physiology, gets you intrigued by and paying attention to the physiology. And how do you break that ice if you haven't been working out? There are two ways that I've done it in the past. And you know, we live our lives, things happen. You get off your routine. How do you get back on it? One way I got back on it in the past was get in a sauna and just lie there. If for no other reason than when you're lying in the sauna, you get a little bored, and so you start stretching a little or something, and one thing leads to the next. But don't do it with, okay, I'm going to use this sauna as a jumping off place to go on to something. It's something to do. Now, there's another thing that's great, and you can find this on YouTube. And I love this. And there was one time when I got off of my diet and exercise and everything, and I got back on it by doing this. It's called the Chinese, different names for it, Chinese bow stick or Chinese dong stick or Chinese bamboo stick. You'll find it. Just search it on YouTube. And all it is, it's a stick, that's about, I don't know, I think it's as long as your height. I actually have different heights because I use them indoors. I don't want to bang the walls with a stick that's longer than I need for a particular exercise. But there's some woman, my favorite video of it is a woman, she's English, older woman, and she just takes you through a little routine. It's great. And it's got it's very, you don't even break a sweat. It's a stretching thing. Oh, by the way, that physician I talked to, I asked him he was a cardiologist. That's what he was. Well, no, that was a different one. There was one who was renal and the other cardiologist. But this cardiologist, I asked him, what's the best exercise for the heart and cardiovascular health? His answer was very interesting. He said, just some light exercise for 15 minutes a day where you just maybe break a very light sweat. Not a big, heavy sweat. Just something where you don't even feel like you need to take a shower afterwards. I found that intriguing, and there's I can't think of his name, but he was a very famous bodybuilder. And it was like 15 or more than that. It was like 25 years ago, I think, where I was trying to find out about something. And I called a number and I mentioned his name. And the guy said, I am. And I was actually talking to him. I couldn't believe it, But he was famous for saying people overtrain way more than they need. 15 minutes is all it takes, and finding the exercise routine that I wouldn't even say enjoy so much. I mean, enjoy, we could say, yeah. I mean, for a while I was into tennis till I got in the ashram and there were no tennis courts, but I enjoyed that. But also, I was also fascinated by it, getting the strokes down and all. And so find something that you find fascinating. I've seen some people that are like 300 pounds or way overweight. They got bad hips and they're trying to lose weight by going for a 3-mile walk in the woods, in the mountains every day. And you just watch them walking and it's like they're tearing up their body. And yeah, is walking good? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But it's just torture. And it's too hard on a grossly overweight physiology, hard on the hips, hard on the knees. There's another thing. Scotty, what's that guy's name? You were talking to me about him the other day. He does kettlebells. He's Russian. Starts with a P.
Yeah, it's Pavel. Pavel is his name. Pavel.
Do you know how you spell it?
Pavel.
Pavel. Pavel. Yeah. He's this, trainer or whatever, and he does a lot of videos about proper exercise and stuff. I saw an interview with him once, and I found it fascinating because they asked him what his workout routine was, and I think they were expecting some big, huge, elaborate thing. He says, I do I do swings and dips. And the interviewer was like, was that it? And he said, yeah, swings and dips. And he said, I've been doing that for a few years. And kettlebell swings, all that. And you can look on YouTube or whatever, see videos, learn how to do it. It's just, you can do it with a dumbbell, or I guess you could do it with pretty much anything that's heavy, or doesn't have to be too heavy. And that's another important point. But you just, you're standing up straight with your feet apart. You just bend over, put the weight between your knees, and then come up and back like that. And that's called a kettlebell swing. Don't do it based on what I just said, but you can learn how to do it properly. No big deal. It's easy. It's one exercise that for a lot of people, they're just built that way, that kettlebell swings just seem easy for them to do. And it burns a lot of excess calories, and it works almost every muscle in the body. arms, hips, butt, thighs, quads, hamstrings, back, you know.
There's a great side effect of that too, right? You're kind of loosening some scar tissue and fascia and things like that, where you might have old injuries. You know, kettlebells are really great for unsticking things that are stuck, sort of, right?
Yes, and with kettlebells, you got to be careful, especially if you're doing arm things, because you know they kind of flail and you can kind of hurt your arms and stuff. But just do what feels right. That's the nice thing about swings is it's very stable. It's a good way to start. But yeah, for a long time, I mean, I got in really great shape several years ago by doing a whole kettlebell routine, you know?
Yeah. He has a website called Strong First, I think it's called.
What's it called?
Strong First.
Strong First?
Yeah.
FIRST, Strong First. How about that?
Right.
Yeah. But now here's the other thing. And it took me years to learn this. And it's important. I remember, gosh, this goes back a long, long time in the 80s. And I heard about this Chinese doctor in Manhattan. I was living in upstate New York at the time. And he was kind of like, I mean, people would fly in from all over the world just to watch him practice, take people's pulses and that. His name was Dr. Shen. And I remember he once told me, never lift up anything that's more than 10 pounds. And at the time I was like, really, you know? And of course, then I got into lifting weights and I was doing squatting 500 pounds. I mean, with a safety squat bar, but still that's a lot of weight. And then another Chinese doctor, Dr. Kui, said the same thing to me. And then a Qigong expert said the same thing to me. And then there's this guy I know, he was actually a cook at the Mount Soma for a while, and we were still good friends. But he cooked for some of the most famous people in the world. You know, a lot of names you've heard of, you know, and almost all of them. You know, you name somebody, oh yeah, I cook for him, because sounds like these billionaires all get together on their yachts and then entertain everybody. At any rate, he cooked for Schwarzenegger once, and this cook he's in good shape. He works out a lot. Schwarzenegger told him light weights. Just work out with very light weights. And he was even, and I do this, and it's good. It's 100 reps of 10-pound dumbbell bench presses, for example. And and Schwarzenegger told him, he said, the only reason you should do a lot heavier weights is if you're really trying to perform on stage as a bodybuilder, you know. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, I think a lot of people, they push too much and they end up hurting their joints by just using too much weight. Oh, here's another big one. And this, I would recommend this to everybody just because it's cool, even if you don't work out. But there's a thing called Athlean X, ATHLEAN space X. Athlean X. The guy's name is Jeff Cavalier. He's a physical therapist. And also he was a trainer, I think, for the New York Mets or something like that, conditioning trainer. He has a bunch of great videos. And, you know, I get inspired to go down to the gym. The way I get inspired to go into the gym is oftentimes to watch some of his videos. And he talks about the physiology and this muscle and how to work this muscle, how to work that muscle, and why people are doing this wrong or whatever. To me, it's just so fascinating. Exercise physiology, really. So at least take a look at Athlean X, you know. And another thing, and I'm looking at my notes here that I want to say, you do not buy a good body. You rent it. Now, what do I mean by that? I remember years ago, I mean, I was a kid back then, I figured, oh, I'm going to exercise and get in great shape, and then I'll have a great physique the rest of my life. Wrong. You know, you have to keep it up. But maintenance is way easier than getting in shape. And one of the problems is that people get in shape and then say, oh, good, I'm in good shape. And they kind of ignore the maintenance or don't do the maintenance properly. And that's the same with weight loss too, by the way. A lot of people, yo-yo diet, they call it. They lose a lot of weight, they get in great shape, and then they don't do the maintenance properly. And there are different ways to do maintenance properly, but that underground fat loss, or whatever it's called, weight loss, whatever thing that you can download, you basically just up your caloric intake a little bit, but then increase it a bit more than that with protein, not carbs, not fatty. So if you do that, you're just going to get fat again. And also the other thing he said, and I found this interesting, is now the refeed meal or the cheat meal, whichever you choose to call it, instead of doing it every 2 weeks, now you go to every week, or you can even try twice a week or even 3 times a week. So you do this low intake and then you do your cheat meal, then do low intake and then cheat meal, then low intake and then like that. And that's maintainable, because if you're craving that pizza, you know that in a day or two you can have it, I'm feeling you, Adrian.
You're feeling me wanting to say something?
I don't, or else
Through the ethers. You're right.
Or just being intrigued by it,
Well, I'm always I would say you and I share fascination. I'm fascinated by everything. But sarcoplasm and muscle fiber.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That was something in my notes. I'm glad I sent you a copy of them. And this is so important. All this stuff is so important. There are 2 kinds of muscle, you could say. Some muscles are predominantly sarcoplasm. Sarcoplasm is basically water, fluid. And then there's the other kind, which is basically now it's just like the muscle strands, the actual muscle tissue itself. Now, the advantage of sarcoplasm is you work out a little bit and you get big really fast because you're plumping up all the muscles with fluid, basically. So it looks great. I've heard some people refer to it as show muscle, but you're gaining strength, but not really all that much strength. Whereas the other mesomorph, I think it's the other more muscle strand kind of muscle, you can gain strength a lot, but the muscles don't really get all that much bigger. So you'll see these real skinny guys that are incredibly strong, and then you'll see these really big buff guys that you think are incredibly strong, and really they're not. My muscles are predominantly sarcoplasm. So it doesn't take much working out for me to get big and muscular, really. But I'll have to say, I've been accused, I can think of 2 times right off the top of my head, I've been accused of taking steroids. I would never take steroids, but I get big so fast. I remember once I was at a hotel giving a lecture, and it just so happened that there was a bodybuilding conference there. So I just walked through, and it was kind of interesting. And, all the different booths are lined up. And one of the trainers at one of the booths looked at me and said, you could get really buff really quick. And I realized it was years later, really, when I realized that that's because I have the sarcoplasm kind of money. So you can gain a lot of muscle real easily, So it's good to know which you are, because a lot of these workouts that are designed to, increase the weight you're lifting every week or whatever like that, that is absolutely not going to work very well for a person who's predominantly sarcoplasm. Because you don't get strong. You get stronger, yes, but you don't get all that much stronger all that fast. Now, here's another thing. A lot of people have lower back trouble. It's very common. Here's a very simple solution, and you'll see it if you look at Athlean X and maybe write Athlean X lower back or something. You can find it in there. He's got tons of videos. But there's one exercise you can do. See, usually the reason lower back oftentimes is sore is because there's a muscle underneath your big butt muscle. That's the gluteus maximus. There's a smaller muscle lower called the gluteus medius. And that muscle can tend to not be used. In fact, there are a lot of people that can have real strong butts and can squat a whole bunch of weight and stuff, but they have lower back pain. And if you have them do the exercise I'm just talking about, which is really very simple, they're not very good at it at all, even though they can squat tons of weight. And what it is, it's very simple. You stand next to the kitchen counter, for example, and let's say it's the kitchen counter is on your right. Well, you put all your weight on your left foot, and then you put your hand on the kitchen counter just for stabilization. And then you kind of, with your right hip, you kind of lift the right hip up and then kind of let it slouch down. And when you do that, you'll kind of feel maybe a stretch in your butt, you know. It's what you're doing is activating and waking up the gluteus medius muscle. And in Athlean X, he recommended doing it 50 times. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted, but I find it works for me if I just do it a few times. And then, of course, you do it to the other side. And because it's that gluteus medius muscle that works on stability of the hips and the sacrum and all that. And it can go a long way into helping the lower back, you know. We could get into stability. There are two kinds of muscle memory. One is size, you know, just strength and big muscles. The other is stabilization. And to that, we would talk about the core, of which kettlebell swings, by the way, is a great core exercise. It gets the whole core starting at the top and going all the way through the back and the hips and the legs, hamstrings, all that. So, but if that's all integrated properly, then you have stabilization. And that's a real athlete has two things. Well, more than two things, but stabilization as well as strength. You know, we could get into endurance and all that. What else, you guys? Let me scan through my notes. If you guys have something else to bring up, now be the time. I'm just going to see.
I'm thinking, what do people who are vegetarians do for protein in their diet?
There's all kinds of things you can do. I mean, well, it depends on what kind of vegetarian. I mean, and are they vegan or what are they? But and then there's so much there that's so individual. There are all kinds of vegetarian and vegan protein powders. There's tofu, and if you do dairy, there's cottage cheese and milk. But now milk, I don't drink a lot of milk. I pretty much limit it to in my coffee in the morning because it's, I don't know, the only kind of milk I like is whole milk, you know, and Ayurveda is into whole milk as opposed to low fat or anything like that. And then, you know, some people eat eggs. Personally, I like to say that I'm a vegetarian that could be caught eating absolutely anything at a particular moment in time. That kind of reminds me of that, what's his name, Pavel guy or whatever, because they asked him how old he was. He said he's 20. I mean, he's in his 50s, I guess. I don't know. And the guy said, no, come on, seriously, how old are you? And he said, I'm 20. And he said, I like the mindset. I want to hold the mindset that my body is 20. And I respect that, actually. At first, I was like, oh, come on, man, you know. But then when I thought about it, it makes sense, you know. I know Dr. Quay, and they talk about this a lot. It's not your chronological age, it's your physiological age. And I remember for years he used to, I mean, I was in my 60s, and he said, 21, you're 21 years old, because I was in great shape. And then there's a number of, you know, I had a major trauma in my life, and at the worst of it, when my diet went to heck and I was just a mess and I was eating whatever I wanted and I gained weight, I went and saw him. You know, he takes your pulse and looks at your tongue and all that. And he said, you're 65 years old. And I said, oh, God, you know. So I started working out again and everything. And I just saw him last week. He says, you're 21, you know. So that's the point. Be 21. And I don't care who you are. I mean, within reason, you can do it. But find what works for your body. If you're grossly overweight with bad hips, I would not recommend hiking up mountains all day long. It's, you know, it's just incongruous with the state of your physiology. Find the exercise that works for you and realize that you're not going to lose weight from exercise. You're going to lose weight from restricted caloric intake. You know, the exercise is a great supplement. It's an important supplement for many different reasons. But you lose weight by calorie restriction. Anything else, you guys, or did I say? A little exercise goes a long way. Personally, what I find is if I get into an exercise routine, if it's bow stick, which is great, if you just did that, it'd be great. Or if it's sauna or whatever, if I just get into something, I start to become intrigued. And, you know, before, you know, I'm back in the gym doing this and doing that. But I'm really having a lot of fun, and I really am becoming a bigger and bigger believing in low weights, especially if you're, you know, not 20 years old, but even for young kids, you know, trying to move a lot of heavy weight. I believe that's a mistake, you know.
One more thing.
Yeah.
You said exercise to burn calories or conserve muscle.
Wait, I can't. I need a new headset. What did you say?
Yeah. Exercise to what was it? Exercise to burn calories or to conserve muscle. What did you mean by that?
It's a very good question. When you diet and when you're restricting calories, and I got a great story about this, but the body can be burning up muscle instead of burning up fat. And the way to prevent that is to exercise even a little bit while you're dieting, because then you burn fat and the exercise stimulates the muscle to conserve the muscle. And it doesn't take a lot. I remember the story. I was living in San Diego at the time, and I was in a health food store, and there was a guy in the back that was doing body fat tests. He had some machine or something, percent body fat. And there was this girl there that had been really working out. I guess she lost a lot of weight. She looked good, you know, and but she had the test done, and her percent body fat was really, really high. They call that skinny fat, you know, because she looked skinny. And she was so bummed out. But she wasn't exercising. She was just really dieting. So she was burning muscle. Now, the good news about that is you can get that muscle back pretty fast by staying on that same restricted caloric diet and working out just a little bit, exercising a little bit. There's another point that's brought up there. Another big debate. Can you gain muscle and lose fat at the same time? Well, if you're really ripped and really lean and stuff, it gets harder and harder to do that. But for most of us who can stand to lose 10 pounds of fat or more, yes, then you can build muscle and lose fat at the same time. And it's a balance, you know, but you can use actually on a very, I won't say it's, when you have a lot of fat like that, it's not even that subtle of a balance. Even if you keep the calories way down, eat your protein and that, but keep the calories way down and exercise, you will gain muscle and lose fat simultaneously. Another thing, gosh, we could do a whole series of podcasts on this, couldn't we? There's so much information. But I think these are the main points. But another thing I'll say is, you know, how much protein should you eat a day to gain muscle? And some people are like 1.5 to 2 grams a day. That's over the top. I think anything over 0.7 grams per pound of body weight is enough. And then there's a debate, and I don't really know the answer to this one, but is that 0.7 grams per total body weight, or is it 0.7 grams per lean? So if you're 200 pounds, and let's say 100 pounds and 20% fat, you got 80 pounds of muscle, or that 80 pounds lean. And so it's a 0.7 times 80, or is it 0.7 times 100? I don't know. Point being, though, you don't have to eat tons and tons of protein. But of course, some protein is good and it's important, you know. Anything else? Adrian?
That's it for me.
Scott? All right, I think that's good, and that gives the overview. main points. A little exercise goes a long way. Find what works for you, and your physiology is different. A halfback is never going to be a wide receiver, period. So just find the nature of your physiology. Find what works for you. And it actually feels good to the body. I think that Pavel guy, I think that's even what he said about kettlebell squats. He said, it just works for his body. Find what works for your body. Explore, enjoy, and get ripped. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. And if you like this and you want more of this kind of thing, I have a lot of knowledge about it. I mean, I'm a veterinarian and I've studied physiology for years. We can do more of this if you'd like. Okay, thanks for listening. Take care. And happy Mother's Day again.